Diuretics, whether they're prescription or herbal, work. They dehydrate you. You don't want to work around dehydrated all the time. That's an important point. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your weekly question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. So glad you can join us on this 5th day of June in the year 2024. 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. We're going to jump right into the questions. The first 2 questions on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question is about diuretics. Your opinion on the natural diuretics that some of the supplement companies sell. Are they worth trying for someone who can't find dyazide?
Yeah, I was one of the first people, Sid, who actually recommended that Gerard Dente back in, I think it was early 2000s, produced X-PEL, an herbal diuretic, because I was helping, promote his company when I worked for Muscle Development. And then when I actually launched Species Nutrition, we had a product called Aqualize, which was very popular. Because the herbal versions of these diuretics are pretty potent. If you use wirh, dandelion, there's a couple of really good herbal diuretics. So you can get really dehydrated from these, and they're not. You don't mess around with them. I know people that take them all the time. You cannot take even herbal diuretics all the time. You will walk around dehydrated. Dehydrated muscle is very catabolic. Can you use them in place of diazide? Yeah. The problem is that all the different companies have different grades of these diuretics and different dosages. And a lot of times it's hard to standardize it. My usual protocol is about 800 milligrams of wirh, with each meal the day before a competition. That seems to work really well. But, you're assuming that all the wirh out there is standardized, which it never is. When you use diazide, if you use 37, milligrams of diazide, or take a half of that pill, how much you're taking, and it's going to have a very reproducible result. So the herbal diuretics are just kind of you're rolling the dice sometimes with those. Obviously, if you can't get a prescription diuretic, it's better than nothing. But the prescription ones are a little more precise, and exactly how they're going to respond in a person's body, and that's why I prefer to use those. I don't think if you're in shape, you need to use a lot of diuretic anyway. So if you used a half a diazide the night before a competition, I think that would be more than enough. If you want to use wirh, like I said, my recommended protocol is usually 800 milligrams, with every meal the day before the show.
Before we take the second question, again, these first 2 questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app, we did have a special from our friends at Titan Medical. It is a special for Tesamorelin, the new FDA-approved Tesamorelin. No blood work needed for this one. A lot like IGF-1, Dave, if you want to tell the fans a little bit more about this special now at Titan Medical.
Well, Tesamorelin is a compounded version of the prescription brand that doctors can write for you. It's growth hormone releasing peptide, but it's very potent. So it stimulates the pituitary gland to directly release growth hormone. Now, it's a lot cheaper than GH, way cheaper, and it's more readily available. And I think if you're going to go the route where I don't want to spend thousands of dollars on growth hormone, this is a great option. Once again, you don't need to get blood work done, although I think they're still doing the blood work special over at TitanMedicalCenter.com, so you can contact them about that if you want them to do blood work. If you don't, you can just buy the Tesamorelin from them, and it's a discounted price. Did they say how much they're taking off it? Said on that?
No, we don't have a exact.
It's dramatically discounted, so just contact them. Tell them you're Dave Palumbo, RxMuscle sent you, and you can get the prescription brand of GH releasing peptide, which is called Tesamorelin, and they got great products over at Titan. And they're, the great thing about them also, Sid, is that all the people who work there are very helpful. So they'll answer a lot of your questions if you have questions about how to take it, how long you should use it, and all those great things. So thank you for Titan Medical Center and all that they do for us and the support of the show.
We'll drop the link below in the article description. Check them out, TitanMedicalCenter.com. Second question. Again, these two first questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. When an athlete is around 10 days out from a show, why do some trainers give a refeed of carbs or some give a cheat meal? What's the difference between those, and how does a body react on those, in particular, 10 days out from a show?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do the same thing. A lot of times I want to test how the person is going to respond. So, if I think the person is in good shape or even close to being ready for contest, I want to see how they're going to respond when I carb them up. So I might do a mock carb up day, do the typical diet I'm doing with them to carb up, and I might give them, like 240 grams of carbs, see how they look the next day. I'll have them send me posing video and some pictures. And that seems to do one thing. Now, for people who are super crazy depleted, a lot of times I'll give them people call it a refeed meal because it sounds less ominous, but I like to call it a cheat meal. A cheat meal to me is a burger and fries. A refeed meal would still qualify to me as eating rice and potatoes and stuff like that and clean stuff, even though it's more than you would normally eat. So my carb up refeed would be considered, like I said, clean carbs, whereas my cheat meal would be something that's dirty, whether it be sushi or burgers and fries. I don't usually use pizza. I know some people say, can I eat pizza for my cheat meal? Pizza, it's very hard to digest. You don't really carb up well on it. I remember back when I was a runner, they would when we would have big district meets and stuff like that in college, we would go to travel, they would take us out for a carb up meal the night before the race. And invariably it consisted mostly of pizza, and it would destroy. After doing it 1 or 2 times, I would have the worst race the next day because I probably didn't digest lactose well. It would just lay in my stomach. It was like the next morning, it felt like it was still there, and I think it was. So I never did that again. But pizza doesn't really digest well. It's funny that burgers and fries would digest better than pizza, but they do. And I think it's the cheese. I just think a lot of people can't handle that much lactose and that much cheese, the way it comes on pizza. And a lot of times the sauce makes you have indigestion from it. So I don't recommend that, but I do it a lot with my people, once again, to test out, to see how their bodies will respond to what they're going to look like the next day. This way I kind of have an idea of when I carb them up the following week for the show, what I need to do. Should I do a cheat meal? Should I do clean carb up? Maybe I need to do both. And it really depends on how they look. These questions came from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, that's an app that I offer. It's $29 a month to join. You download it from your iTunes store, your Android store. You basically get me as your coach in your back pocket. Essentially, all my writings I've ever done, all my videos I've ever done in one place. We put up a workout every single week for you guys to follow. I answer everyone's questions in an open forum. So you see everyone's questions and everyone's answers. That's a great learning experience. And I do a Q&A video exclusively for the app members every single week. Never missed a single week. So you're getting actually an extra Ask Dave episode essentially on the app. So it's a lot of value for $29 a month. And like I said, it's a constant learning experience. Remember, bodybuilding is an evolution of learning constantly about your body and answering, basically ascertaining knowledge and accumulating it in your brain so that you can use it for obviously yourself. And then if you want to help other people, this is also another great avenue. So thank you all for supporting the app. We have a lot of app members, a lot of active people with some great questions, and I really appreciate it.
So those first two questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. We now get questions from our Instagram page and our Facebook page. On Facebook, if you're not already following us, just search RxMuscle in the search bar. On Instagram, official_RxMuscle. We have a lot of good questions. See how many we can get to over the course of the next few minutes. UC Summer, we've gotten a lot of questions about sodium recently. Really more so as far as like pre-contest, off-season ratios. Good amount of daily sodium. Do you recommend any certain amount to your clients?
I tell people don't restrict sodium ever. Okay, never. And if you eat a lot of sodium on a regular basis, salt, you're going to be very desensitized to it, which means that you're not going to retain fluid from eating salt. I eat so much salt on a regular basis between putting salt and soy sauce in my food that I can eat the saltiest meal in the world. You can send me to any restaurant where they salt the crap out of it, and I will not retain 1 ounce of water from that meal because my aldosterone levels are low. The hormone aldosterone, which is released from the adrenal glands, regulates sodium and water balance. So when your sodium levels are low in your body, aldosterone increases. And aldosterone's job is to grab sodium and retain it. And when you retain sodium, you retain water. So you want aldosterone to be low. If you don't eat sodium on a regular basis, whether it be because you think you should restrict it or because you just don't like it, your aldosterone levels will be high and you'll be very fluid retentive. You'll be very easy to hold water. So that's one reason you don't want to restrict sodium. The other reason is that your body uses sodium for muscle contraction. So I know people that are walking around, they don't eat any sodium during the diet because they think that it's going to help them burn fat, which is ludicrous. It has nothing to do with the fat burning process. And they're walking around like with a headache all the time because they're dehydrated. Their muscles are not contracting. They're getting cramps at night. This is a problem. How much sodium? I don't know because I don't restrict sodium. Salt your meals, put some soy sauce on your food when you cook it. Just don't restrict sodium. First of all, I crave sodium like crazy. Now, I do know from having my DNA tested that I don't taste sodium the way normal people do. To me, I have to eat a lot more for something to taste salty to me. So maybe that's why I use so much sodium, but it actually works as an advantage in bodybuilding. So some people are a little more sodium sensitive in terms of they don't like the taste of it. In those cases, I tell people to maybe drink electrolyte drinks. So if you use our Amino Evolved product, we have sodium and potassium in there. We have an electrolyte blend in there, which will help you. But most people do not mind salting their food, especially when they're dieting. You kind of crave salt when you're dieting because you don't really hold water when you're dieting because your carbs are usually lower. So do not restrict. Easiest way to get sodium is, like I said, buy a salt shaker, shake it on your food, or I use like the soy sauce, curcumin soy sauce. It's important that you get a soy sauce that doesn't have added sugar to it. Some of them do have added sugar. Curcumin does not add sugar. You can use that pretty much. You can drink that stuff and it won't bother you. So that's my recommendations.
We got some philosophical type of questions. I like these kind of questions because I feel like these are the kind of questions that, a lot of our viewers watching, they might think this, but they might not want to address it, or rather if somebody else asks the question. This one is from Murakami. Are the best exercises the ones you don't want to do? He cites lunges as one that wrecks him so bad that he misses the re-rack, but I'll feel like a wuss if I miss them. And I feel like before you answer, you get a lot of questions about, legs, about different, like glutes or whatever like that. And your answer is always squats, and that people don't want to squat. Do you feel as if this question applies?
Yeah, this question applies, but probably just not to the extent that, like, in other words, not every exercise that's a pain in the ass to do is something you should do just because it's a pain in the ass to do it. Like, I don't think lunges offers that much, advantage if you're trying to build massive quads. Is it good, like, maybe if you're going to do it like, pre-contest to maybe bring in a little more detail? Yeah. So, but squats also suck, right? Because who the hell wants to walk out with all that weight on your back and have to wrap your knees and you put a belt on? It's a pain in the ass, right? It's much easier to sit on a leg press machine. So squats definitely fit that category. Yeah, 100%. Bench press does. A lot of people don't want to get on a bench press anymore because they don't want to load the plates up. They'd rather get on a hammer strength or a selectorized thing and just, squeeze out on a machine and squeeze it out because it's easier. I think that a lot of people don't do certain exercises because they are, look, I go to the gym. I'm so happy I can shoulder press now because I have, since I've got shoulder replacements. I love doing dumbbell press, overhead presses, but the benches, the right angle benches that you sit in to do the shoulder presses are kind of off away from the dumbbell rack. So I have to take the dumbbells, I roll them over to the thing, and then I got to roll them back and get the next set. It's a pain in the ass. It would be way easier to sit on a shoulder press machine and just do it, or a Smith machine. But I do the exercise because I know I get much better benefits out of the free weight movements because of the balance aspect of it and the individual one arm at a time type of situation. And I love the fact that I can do free weights now without pain. So yes, don't be lazy. The best exercises are usually the biggest pain in the asses, but that doesn't mean that every pain in the ass exercise is something you should be doing. That's the point I was making.
So another, I guess, philosophical one is from Gringles Facile. What do you think of, quote, fitness dailies? Now, this is popular right now because it's all over social media. You see it a lot on like the fitness TikTok. It's a debated topic. Fitness dailies, for example, training biceps every single day, but only 5 minutes of curls without stopping before leaving the house in the morning with a set of dumbbells, or 10 minutes of abs, one set for 10 minutes. A popular influencer touts these and says, anything you do more often, you make progress within life in general. So the same applies here. What I know about rest and recovery doesn't align with this philosophy. So I'm curious what you think. I also know that he may not be breaking the muscles apart so badly that he needs to rest for a long time. Maybe that's why he can do it every day. Your thoughts?
Well, you could do push-ups every day and probably not necessarily overtrain your chest, right? Because you're really just using your body weight. It's kind of an endurance exercise, really. And doing, a couple sets of pump, curls is an endurance exercise. So yeah, you're building endurance. You're not building any muscle doing that. So you're kind of wasting your time. And you might not be excessively breaking down the muscle if you're not lifting heavy, and doing that. So if you were to lift heavy barbells every single day, even if it was only for 2 or 3 sets, you would overtrain your biceps for sure. You would never recover. You'd always be breaking down the muscle. You'd never be building it up. If you're just doing a weight that you can kind of handle and you're just doing reps, then you're building endurance essentially, right? You're building up bicep endurance, which would be great if you're doing some kind of a rep contest in, it's, I don't know, CrossFit or some crazy thing like that. I train my abs every day just because, for athleticism, and I don't put weight. I use my body weight. I lay in front of the TV and I train abs, maybe 1 or 2 sets. That's fine because I'm not trying to build my abs. But if you're trying to build muscle, the idea behind building muscle is break down the muscle, okay, the most severely that you can, meaning that you have to use the heaviest weight you can with full range of motion so that you can recruit the most muscle fibers and break them down. If you're using lightweight, you're not recruiting enough muscle fibers, so you're not really breaking anything down excessively. You want to maximize how much muscle you break down. And the only way to do that is not doing more sets. It's doing heavier weights with full range of motion to activate those fibers to make them have to work. Your body will only use as many muscle fibers as it needs to lift the weight. If you can lift heavier weight, you're going to recruit more fibers. And that's the idea behind, progressive overload resistance, high intensity training. You do that and you break down maximum muscle fibers. Now you have to let the fibers heal themselves. And from my experience, and I'm sure if you talk to Dorian Yates and Mike Mentzer and a host of other, top level bodybuilders, they'll tell you the muscle needs about a week, a good 5 to 7 days to recover from a workout that maximally recruits the most muscle fibers. And that's why we train each body part once a week with maximum intensity, full range of motion, and heavy weight. And that's how you build muscle. You can do dailies, if you want to call them that, whatever. You're not going to build any muscle doing that. You'll build endurance. And that's fine if that's what your goal is. So a lot of people think, I have a weak body part, I'm going to train it every day a little bit. That's not going to make the body part better. It might not make it worse, but it's not going to make it better.
Carlos Fit NYC, I know you touched on this on Heavy Muscle Radio, but for this audience, thoughts on Ryan Garcia accusations against Nutra Bio? I guess that's the supplement company that's sponsoring him, that one of their products had ostarine in it. Is it possible the company makes their own products and do not sell ostarine? It's kind of similar to when John Bones Jones was popped, and I think he blamed GAT supplements or whatever, and obviously they had to come out and defend themselves as well.
Yeah, you know what the interesting thing is, he didn't blame just them, he blamed another company too. And he said that he tested both products. One was from one company, one was from another, and they both had ostarine, which right there, that's a red flag for me. I'm sorry. So he also tested his open product. Okay, Victor Conte made that point. Have someone go on Amazon and buy a sealed product and have it tested. If that comes back, the sealed product tested that it contains ostarine, I'm much more likely to believe him in that case. I don't believe him because let's say he didn't know that he was taking something, and I really want to believe that the guy's an honest guy because I do like him. Let's say someone got into his house and sabotaged his open jug of protein powder or whatever, carb powder, whatever he was using, and threw some stuff in there and mixed it in there so that he'd failed the drug test. You can't blame the company for that. The company has retentions in their warehouse. They have sealed product. I'm sure they'll have no problem testing it. I do not believe that their product was tainted because there's no way two companies were tainted with the same stuff. But if that's the case and they can test a sealed product and it comes back, then he has a huge lawsuit against these companies. If not, then he's blowing smoke up people's butts. Now, it doesn't mean that he's lying. It just means that his products might have been tainted, but sorry, the rule is no supplement rule, meaning that if you take supplements that were tainted, they don't care. The drug testing, the Olympics don't care. VADA, the voluntary drug testing agency that he was working with, they don't care. It's your responsibility, and that's a shame. That's why it's very important that you use products from people that you trust, and also be very careful about who's around you. He's got an entourage of people around him. All it takes is one freaking person to be a Benedict Arnold in that group, one turncoat, one guy who doesn't like him or something like that and wants to sabotage him, and that's the end of him. And that's unfortunately the case. That's why doing these voluntary drug tests the way he does it, I know he thinks he was like trying to say, hey, I'm not, no one cares. You're better off not doing it, because the only thing it can only work against you. It can't work in favor of you, because people will think you're still cheating. It doesn't. People believe what they want to believe. And if he hadn't done that VADA, which he didn't have to do, he voluntarily was in that drug testing program, none of this would have even come up. So I'm sure he's mad at himself for even getting involved in the whole thing. But you can't blame the nutrition company unless you test their own, sealed containers. And I don't think that's what happened.
Let's go to Alan Minch. I respond very well to 50 mg of winstrol a day and 500 to 600 mg of test. Much better than other orals for me for whatever reason. What's the longest I should run an oral like that before taking a break? I typically don't go more than 8 weeks with orals.
What was he said he took winstrol and what else?
Test 500 to 600 mg of test.
Oh, but that's injectable. So that's, he's asking about the winstrol aspect of it, I'm assuming. Because the winstrol is oral. Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, winstrol's not that toxic. You could probably do 12 to 16 weeks of that and not have a problem. Whereas you wouldn't do that with Dianabol or Anadrol, because those are way more toxic. Like I said, winstrol, Anavar, not very toxic in terms of orals compounds go. I personally wouldn't want to take them that long. Winstrol, I don't think you need to take it. Maybe 8 weeks is good. You might want to start with I would prefer to start with like test and maybe EQ or test and DECA, and then switch to test and winstrol, something like that. That's probably a better way to do it. But if you really insisted on wanting to use the winstrol, you can do 12 to 16 weeks. I don't think you'd have a problem.
Let's go to Lucas Conrad. With the influx of generic generic, it says generic RHgh. Can you please explain as to what, quote, dimmer tracings from lab tested growth indicate? Does superior GH contain less to zero dimmer? As dimmer increases,
dimer,
spelled D-I-M-M-E-R. So I guess as increases,
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't even know what he's talking about, to be honest with you. I'm not really sure.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess the finality of it is, if as dimmer increases, do so the CTS and water bloat swelling side effects. You know what? And I tell you this all the time. If I don't know something, I don't even know what he's talking about, to be honest with you. I'm not. I have no idea what the point he's making. Maybe I can look it up later. I'm not really sure. If growth hormone is 191 amino acid growth hormone, which most of it is, all the recombinant GH at this point is, they have the exact same side effects. They have the exact same exertional effects. If something's weaker, because it says it's 24 IUs per vial and it's only 12, you're going to get half the results of it. And you're going to get half the side effects. That's just the way it works. I don't know what he's talking about with that. I really don't. So sorry, I'm being honest. Let's go to, all right, so I'm trying to think. trying to not. All right, we got some personal questions here. All right, let's go to Iron Hood Corporal. During a bulking session, what do you recommend for carbs and protein? I just finished up a show. I weighed in at 180 pounds.
Yeah, I go back to, protein is pretty stable. Obviously I'll increase it in the off season a little bit. I would probably, if you're 180 pounds, which means you'll probably be up to 200 in a week, you probably should get, 250 to 275 grams of protein. I would probably, what I tell people like right after a show is go up to about 240 grams of carbs a day, if you're not a big carb eater, and give yourself one cheat meal on top of that per day. So probably bring you up to about 300 grams of carbs. And I do that for 2 weeks for a reason, because you're going to cheat invariably after a show, but it's better not to cheat every single meal all day long until you make yourself sick. If you give yourself your five good meals a day, clean meals, and then have one cheat meal every single day to look forward to, it'll control your crazy weight gain. It'll control the water, and it'll control your ability to get off track. Because let's face it, those 2 to 4, 6 weeks after a show, you have a really good anabolic rebound effect, meaning that you have an ability to put a lot of muscle on, whether you're on drugs or not, because you're going to have a ton of drugs in your system anyway. So if you eat right and you eat enough protein and enough, carbs and fats, you're going to grow. Okay. So you don't want to squander that 2 to 6 weeks after the show. That's important. If you're just eating all kinds of junk and getting yourself sick and missing meals because you're overeating at the other meals, that's not going to help your goal of rebounding positively. So have 5 good meals a day, have a cheat meal every day for 2 weeks, and then get back onto a regular program.
Waylon Weller, how much muscle can you lose the last 2 weeks suffering and prepping for a show?
How much? I don't think guys lose muscle at all, to be honest with you. It's very hard. If you're on drugs and you're eating enough protein, you're not going to lose muscle. You might be super flat. Okay, the only way you lose muscle is if you train like a retard, where you're actually doing ridiculous amount of high rep stuff and overtraining and maybe doing excessive cardio and you're not eating enough protein. I mean, there's a lot of variables that you have to do wrong to lose muscle, okay? Especially in 2 weeks, okay? Has it happened? I'm sure. I know guys that starve themselves, and they don't even need to. And so that's the only way you'll lose protein, is if you're just not giving your body enough, or enough. That's how you'll lose muscle. If you're not giving your body enough protein to eat, throughout the day. If you're eating enough protein, and I'm not talking about excessive, you can eat small amounts, but you're eating it throughout the day. Even if you're on a lot of carbs, even if you're on a lot of cardio and you're really suffering, you won't lose muscle. Like I said, you might get flat, but that's something you can fill up at the end with by giving your body a little bit more food. So it's kind of hard, especially when you're on anabolics, to lose muscle. It's easier to lose muscle over a longer period of time. Like if you're just excessively low carbs, excessively, low protein, excessively high cardio for 6 weeks, better chance to lose muscle than in 2 weeks.
Let's go to Simon Lax. Is test, sip, and EQ a good course? Does EQ cause anxiety?
I've had people lately, for some reason, telling me that EQ, gave them headaches. I have another guy who tells me that EQ, he can't eat on EQ. And I just never experienced any of these EQ side effects, which tells me that I think a lot of the EQ out there could be fake. And might not be EQ. So make sure you test all your drugs with the Roy test kits that I sell from Bill Llewellyn on the DavePalumbo.com website. Not that I'm trying to make money off you guys, but it's stupid to waste your money if you're using the wrong drugs. EQ is a very tolerable drug. Most people feel great on it. They get good pumps. They opens their appetite up. They grow well on it. And when I hear a lot of side effects from EQ, I don't really tend to buy it. I tend to think something else is going on here. When I hear side effects from Trenbolone and stuff like that, I'm like, well, yeah, that makes sense, because Trenbolone, you can't sleep, you're irritable, it messes your digestion up. But you don't get that from EQ usually. So now EQ does increase red blood cell count, just like testosterone does. And sometimes if your red blood cell count gets too high, you can raise your blood pressure up, and that could possibly cause headaches and make you feel a little queasy or not good. So check your blood pressure throughout the day. That could be definitely an issue that you might want to address. And a lot of times when guys start gaining weight, okay, because EQ does make you gain weight, your blood pressure goes up. And if you do have high blood pressure, it doesn't mean you have to stop the drugs. It means you need to take a blood pressure medication. Get yourself on an ACE inhibitor or an angiotensin receptor blocker. It's probably a safety net. It's funny, everyone will take an anti-estrogen, but people are afraid to take a blood pressure medication. I don't know why. It's protecting your circulatory system. It's protecting your kidneys. It's protecting your brain. It's protecting your heart. I mean, why not take that? But you won't. You'll take an estrogen blocker or DHT blocker, but you won't take that. So I think more people should probably prophylactically take some sort of a blood pressure medication.
Let's go to Nicholas Kankamir. During the morning of a competition, is it a good idea to take sips of water with the meals you take to look fuller, carbs and a little bit of water to make you fuller?
It really depends on how you look. If you're really, really dry, hard, and a little bit of flat, taking a little, even I'll give guys even 2 ounces of water with each meal just to keep them a little full because I don't want them getting any drier. Whereas other people, I don't mind. I can almost like, I'd like to see them dry out a little bit more. Those are the people that I would say just take tiny sips, to get the food down. But so I kind of judge fluid the day of the show depending on how the person looks.
Jeff Master Blaster Decker, on posing trunks for men's bodybuilding, how do you pick the hip height and strap width, color? What about prejudging and finals? Different suit?
I call up CJ from CJ's Elite. She's always made all my suits my whole career. And I said, what do I need? No, I always like I like to have them high. I always pulled my suit high on the sides. I like the very thin band, on the side. And I like it a little pinched in the back so you can see the outline of your glutes where it doesn't just look like bloomers, that you're wearing on the back. CJ has that down pat. You don't even have to tell her that's a given. I always wore black to prejudging, and I always had a dark blue or a dark purple for the night show. That's just my colors. You have to know what colors look good on you. Some guys look good in red. Some guys look good in yellow. It really depends. You have to know what your color is. I always think, to me, it looks professional to be black at night at the prejudging. Now, if you have really dark skin, and let's say you're African American and you're super dark, I probably wouldn't use black for like a Samson Dowd. I'd probably use a brighter color because it kind of blends into your skin almost. But for most people, especially if you try to have a smaller midsection appearance, the darker colors are better at prejudging.
Take one more question from Jason Gronos. When using BPC-157 and TB-500 for injuries, by the way, we're getting a lot of questions recently on BPC-157 and TB-500, specifically for injuries. Is there a general spot to pin it to take care of multiple injuries, like shoulder and knee, or should it be pinned close to each injured area?
I'm pretty much of the belief that it has to get into your bloodstream to really do any good work. But, just for good measure, I usually do put it wherever I'm hurting. And I got to tell you, I use BPC-157 because I don't use growth hormone ever, because ever since I had thyroid cancer, I'm afraid to use it. So whereas before that was kind of my go-to if I had an injury. So if my foot's hurt, my ankle's hurting me or something like that, or I have an injury, I'll use the BPC-157 at about 200 micrograms per day, and I'll try to put it around the injury. Just I'll lift the skin right wherever the injury is. If you have multiple areas, then mix it up. Maybe one day put it, in one injury, the next day put it where the next injury is. But more than likely, most of the stuff gets into the bloodstream, and that's where it's acting. It's acting in the bloodstream. It's not acting locally. So I don't think you have to worry too much about putting it, like taking 4 shots a day, just to get it in all 4 areas, unless it was a really bad chronic injury, But the stuff definitely works. I've used both. I find the BPC works better than the TB-500. You can use both. Some guys will use a little of both, and that's fine too. Some of the preparations actually come mixed. So in my personal use of both, I found that the BPC works better.
One more from Ari Given. He's feeling tired day after injection on TRT, splitting doses up 100 mg 2 days a week. In general, how to avoid feeling tired after TRT injections?
TRT injections don't like some people, when they take a shot of growth hormone, they legitimately feel tired after. And I don't know if that's because it drops your blood pressure or blood sugar a little bit or what, but I've noticed that too. You don't get tired from TRT is such a long acting type of thing. I think it's psychological at that point. I do think that when people take their shot, they train harder at the gym usually right after that because they think that they're stronger, and they might be. So sometimes I find that, if I have a particularly harder day, I definitely notice I'm more tired the next day, or later that day I'm more tired. Sometimes I even want to take a nap because I'm so tired because the training session was hard. So I think it's more linked to that, your training, that it is linked to the shot itself, because there's no reason why a testosterone shot, which is long acting, should make you tired the same day you take the shot.
That is going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, if you haven't already done so, check out the channel. We have an all-new episode of After Hours from yesterday. It was a live Q&A session with the Whack Pack, so a lot of interesting questions, a lot of interesting debate and discussion. All-new episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. We also have a very compelling interview with men's physique, really a men's physique top Olympia title threat now, Ali Bilal, who recently won the Pittsburgh Pro, the New York Pro. A very harrowing tale of leaving his native war-torn Afghanistan at age 13, literally in the middle of the night, on foot, no possessions, no family. And I mean, it's really a story fit for a movie, in the way that he literally went country to country by himself, learning languages as he went, working 14 hours a day to survive. And now here he is, really one of the top men's physique competitors in the world. So really, really, really.
My favorite interview, Sid. Seriously. It's one of my favorite interviews of all time. I got to tell you, if you watch any interview that I ever do, watch this interview. You will, if you can't be motivated after watching this interview, I don't know what is. And if this is not a movie, I don't know what this is better than any Rocky movie you could possibly watch. This is like Slumdog Millionaire. I mean, this is unbelievable, this story. He actually was competing in a pro show in Germany. One of the stories on the thing you'll hear when I interview him. And he drives up in the taxi to the front of the venue, and he's with his girlfriend, and he's like going crazy. And she's like, "What's the matter?" He's like, "Over there, that bench. You see that park bench in that park across the street?" She's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I lived on that for 3 years."
Oh my God.
And then he went in and he won the pro show in that venue in Germany. How unbelievable is that you sleep on a park bench and you look at him? He probably stared at that venue for 3 years straight every single night, and he years later would wind up going back there and winning a pro physique competition in that same venue. It's unbelievable, the story. It
was nuts. He was talking about how he got his first pair of board shorts. Again, he competes in men's physique. His first pair of board shorts from a supermarket for $3. Went up on stage and he won the show. So, yeah. But again, if you haven't already done so, I'll actually put the tag right here on the screens. If you haven't already watched it, go check it out. Great interview with Ali Bilal. Again, Heavy Muscle Radio, and then yesterday's episode of After Hours. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss anything that we have on this channel. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.